What is up? It is I, your Lord Octopussy, and I'm here with part 3 of my DBD Health Update series. And today, it's killer changes. This is just general base kit killer changes. This does not go into all of the individual killers. Those will be uploaded next week, all at once, so you don't have to wait for your favorite killer, because there's like 27. I can't make you wait a week for each one. So first we're going to be talking about some general changes, then we're going to talk about the base kit Moris system, that Behavior once talked about but have been quite silent on, base kit gen regression, and changes to the Scourge Hook and Hex perk mechanics, and then we'll go over perk changes. So let's get started. So what's the general changes? And first is the only nerf that I've applied to killers, and that is removing Bloodlust's tier 2 and 3. They are very unnecessary, at this point anyway, and really more needs to be looked at map balance rather than the band-aid fix that is Bloodlust. Killer sounds are quieter from the killer's perspective, so from the survivor side, the sounds remain unchanged, but for killer, Demogorgon's footsteps are a bit more bearable. Doubling the points on the hit score event if the hit takes the survivor from the healthy to the dying state. So if you hit someone with a chainsaw and they go from healthy to dying, you get double the amount of blood points for hit. The auras of survivors that are in the dying state are revealed to you within 8 meters. It's a mini base kit Deerstalker. Hooks destroyed by sacrifice respawn after 120 seconds. This just helps prevent abusing bad hook spawns. Even if fixed hook spawns were a thing, I'm sure there could be still some areas that are abused. Breaking pallets or walls can be cancelled, like how you can with a generator. You could start kicking a pallet and then you can cancel it midway through, and if survivors decided to hold W, then you could just chase them. And speaking of pallets, we've updated the pallet break logic. Whenever there's a killer power that can damage a survivor and break a pallet, such as Demogorgon Shred for example, if a survivor is vaulting the pallet at the time of attack, they will both take 1 health state of damage and the pallet will be destroyed. This really only affects the Hillbilly, Cannibal, Demogorgon, the Blight, and the Nemesis. Survivor icons in-game have killer-applied status effects next to their name. So where there would normally be like a hook state for survivors on their side, on the killer side it's like a mini little status effect icon. Speaking of status effect, killer healing debuffs are applied before survivor healing buff. It's just a neat way to help with the weird math that calculates healing speed. Speaking of healing speed, Mangled will now just set the healing time to 21 seconds as opposed to applying a percentage modifier. I don't know if this actually makes a real change, but I think it will just help with the more finicky, like I said, healing speed calculations. Blindness now removes the survivor's ability to see the killer's red stain, also in addition to what it does now. So if a survivor has blindness and oblivious, it's essentially like you have undetectable for that one survivor. Decrease the time taken for survivors to self-mend to 6 seconds, decrease the time taken for survivors to mend another survivor to 4 seconds, decrease the deep wound timer to 12 seconds, and if you stop the mend action before you've fully mended, the progress is reset. An FOV slider that goes up to 15 degrees, so base kit Shadowborn if you want it. And obviously if this were to happen, Shadowborn would be completely reworked and Monitor would just lose the FOV aspect. A beginner mode option in settings for killers, which allows them to see specific indicators that are relevant to their power, so like how Plaid Flannel on Nurse works, or Maple Knight on Doctor, or Chip Monocle on Blight, and etc, etc. These aren't exactly overpowered add-ons, and I don't think anyone would care if they were made a toggleable option. And finally, for the last general base kit change, is reducing the basic attack cooldown time to 2 seconds, which is mainly to help with the current hold W meta, and encourage survivors to use more loops. Obviously, if this were to be implemented, Save the Best for Last would also be completely reworked. And now we're on to Moris. So as a base kit, the killer can Mori the last remaining survivor in the trial, or more specifically, the last survivor in the trial if all other survivors are dead, or escaped, or unhooked with no chance of escape. This is just a reward for actually playing well. I know I talked about Moris in the first video, the offerings, but I have an alternate idea for the Moris, and I'd like to hear what you think about it below. So for the uncommon Oak Memento Mori, instead you can kill up to 1 survivor by your hand during the next trial if all survivors have been hooked at least once. The rare Cypress Mori scales up to 2 survivors if all survivors have been hooked once. The very rare Ivory Memento Mori scales up to 3, and obviously the ultra rare scales up to all 4 survivors. Obviously with the caveat that you can no longer kill the last remaining survivor. And next up we're going to be talking about base kit gen regression. After hooking a survivor, you gain the charged status effect for 45 seconds, which, when you damage a generator, instantly regress it by 15%, and once you've damaged the generator, the charged effect is lost. Obviously, if this were to happen, then Pop Goes the Weasel would be adjusted to compensate for this. And now we can talk about Scourge Hooks. After hooking a survivor on a Scourge Hook, the location of the Scourge Hook changes, and basement hooks and the killer power alternate hooks like Pyramid Head's cages are now also classed as Scourge Hooks. And then finally, on Hex perks, and we'll talk about this more when we actually get into the perks, for the Cliff Notes version, Hex perks do not spawn on a totem instantly. Instead, they will spawn on an available dull or remade totem once the perk actually has an effect. And now for my favourite part of these videos, and that's my perk reworks. So for Agitation, in addition to what it does now, you pick up survivors 20% faster, and you no longer suffer a penalty from missed attacks. Beast of Prey, after hooking a survivor, Beast of Prey activates, enter a chase while Beast of Prey is active to gain the undetectable status effect for 30 seconds, hook a survivor again to reactivate Beast of Prey. Bloodhound, in addition to what it does now, the pools of blood, the auras of pools of blood are revealed to you within 8 meters. Brutal Strength is simply increasing the value to 33%. Cool of Brine, after damaging a generator while charged, Cool of Brine activates. The generator rests at 200% of the normal regression speed and its aura is revealed to you. Whenever a survivor repairs a generator affected by Cool of Brine, the aura disappears and they are faced with a continuous skill check for 10 seconds. If they miss one or stop repairing, the generator becomes blocked for 20 seconds. And Cool of Brine will deactivate if they succeed or fail a continuous skill check. Claustrophobia, when a generator is being repaired, all windows and vault locations within a radius of 32 meters from the generator are blocked for all survivors. This effect persists for 5 seconds after the generator is no longer being repaired, and this effect persists for 30 seconds after a generator is completed. Choleraphobia, in addition to what it does now, survivors healing within your terror radius suffer from the Oblivious and Blindness status effects. Coup de Grace, each time you hook a survivor, Coup de Grace grows in power and gains a token, and when your next lunge attack ends, 1 token is consumed to extend the distance of your lunge by 80%. It makes it so that Coup de Grace only activates if you go further than you normally would. Dark Devotion, damaging the Obsession for a single health state causes them to emit your terror radius for the next 60 seconds, and you are granted the undetectable status effect. The Obsession hears their own terror radius. Dead Man Switch, after hooking the Obsession, Dead Man Switch activates for the next 60 seconds. While activated, any survivor that stops repairing a generator before it is fully repaired causes the entity to block the generator for 45 seconds. Affected generators are highlighted by a white aura. After hooking the Obsession, the survivor furthest away from your current location who is not on a hook will become the new Obsession. Deerstalker, in addition to what it does now, whenever a survivor is recovered from the dying state, the survivor responsible has the aura revealed to you for 8 seconds. Discordance, it essentially no longer produces a loud noise notification, but it's no longer distance-based. Distressing, your heartbeat, or as I like to call it, the edge of your terror radius, is mapped wide, and you gain 100% more bonus blood points in all categories. Dragon's Grip, simply the cooldown, the 80-second cooldown, only applies upon a successful activation. Dying Light, while a survivor who is not the Obsession is on a hook, and you are 24 more meters away, all survivors suffer from a 25% penalty to repair speed. While a survivor who is the Obsession is on a hook, and you are 24 more meters away, all survivors suffer from a 25% penalty to healing speed. Eruption, simply if you damage a generator by any means, it applies and you remove the cooldown. Fire Up, gain a stackable 5% up to a maximum of 25%, action speed bonus 2, picking up and dropping survivors, breaking pallets of breakable walls, damaging generators, vaulting windows, locker searching, hatch closing, missed and successful basic attack cooldowns. Forced Penance, when an injured survivor rescues another survivor from the hook, they will suffer from the broken status effect for 60 seconds. Furtive Chase, just simply so that the terror radius decrease applies to outside of Chase as well. Gearhead, damaging a generator will mark it with Gearhead. Marked generators will be highlighted in yellow for 4 seconds whenever a survivor completes a good skill check while repairing a marked generator. The generator can be marked by Gearhead once every 60 seconds. This means theoretically if all survivors touch all 7 gens, and the game lasts for about 7 minutes, you can mark every single gen. Grim Embrace, each time a unique survivor is hooked, Grim Embrace gains a token. Upon reaching 4 tokens, all tokens are consumed and Grim Embrace activates. The long story short, this means Grim Embrace can activate 3 times, even though the 3rd time would be kind of useless. Hangman's Trick, while carrying a survivor, see the aura of any survivor within 60 meters of the closest 3 hooks. Hooks destroyed by a sacrifice automatically repair after 60 seconds, and survivors who perform the sabotage action will suffer from the exposed status effect for 30 seconds. Hex Blood Favor will simply light up the closest available dull or remade totem upon being activated for the first time. Same with Crowd Control, it lights up the closest available dull or remade totem upon being activated for the first time. Hex Haunted Ground, once Hex Haunted Ground is cleansed, the second totem will also automatically be cleansed at the same time, and Haunted Ground will light up 2 random available dull or remade totems after the first 30 seconds of the trial. Hex Huntress Lullaby simply no longer has the token requirement and lights up the closest available dull or remade totem after survivors receive their first repair or healing skill check. Hex No One Escapes Death has 1 token for each standing dull, remade, boon, hex, or warped totems in the trial before the exit gates are powered. Once the exit gates are powered, your movement speed is increased by 5%, and survivors suffer from the exposed status effect as long as Hex No One Escapes Death has tokens. Putting a survivor into the dying state removes 1 token, and Hex No One Escapes Death lights up a random available dull or remade totem after the exit gates are powered. Hex Plaything is simply a token system similar to the third seal. Hex Ruin. All generators automatically regress at 100% of the normal regression speed whenever they're not being repaired. All generators automatically regress at 200% of the normal regression speed whenever they are not being repaired while charged. Hex Ruin lights up the closest available dull or remade totem after a survivor stops repairing a generator for the first time. Retribution. Yeah, we're removing the Hex effect and we're buffing it a little bit. Survivors cleansing or blessing any dull or remade totems suffer from the blindness and oblivious status effects for 45 seconds, and their aura is revealed for 15 seconds. Whenever any dull or remade totem is cleansed or blessed, all survivors have their aura revealed for 10 seconds. Whenever a Hex warped totem is cleansed or a Hex totem is blessed, you also gain the undetectable status effect for 45 seconds. The survivor who is responsible will become the obsession and gain your terror radius for 45 seconds. Thrill of the Hunt is the same, we're just removing the Hex aspect. Hex the Third Seal. Hex the Third Seal appears as a dull totem, or remake totem, to any survivors that are not affected by Hex the Third Seal. Hex the Third Seal lights up the closest available dull or remake totem after hitting a survivor with a basic attack or a special attack. Hex Undying is basically the same, but Hex Undying will light up a random available dull or remake totem after another Hex totem lights up. Order. Order triggers a loud noise notification for 6 seconds whenever a survivor performs any of the following actions. Unlocks a chest, and picks up an item, including limited items. Survivors who trigger Hoarder suffer from the oblivious status effect for 15 seconds. Insidious. Hitting a survivor with a basic attack or special attack grants you the undetectable status effect for 15 seconds. Iron Grasp. In addition to what it does now, pauses the wiggle timer for 4 seconds after hitting a survivor, and you can see the wiggle timer. Jolt. Whenever you put a survivor into the dying state, all generators within 32 meters of the survivor instantly explode and start regressing, and applies an immediate 8% regression penalty. Lethal Pursuer now lasts for 15 seconds. Lightborn. In addition to what it does now, the beam of the flashlight will still change to appear to be blinding the killer, and survivors will still gain a score event from an attempted blind. This makes Lightborn way more mind gameable. Mad Grit. You drop carried survivors twice as fast. Dropping a survivor activates Mad Grit and grants you the following benefits: 15% haste status effect, no missed basic attack cooldown, 50% decreased successful basic attack cooldown. Mad Grit deactivates and goes on cooldown after damaging a survivor for 1 health state, and Mad Grit has a cooldown of 60 seconds. Merciless Storm. While a survivor is on a hook, Merciless Storm activates. While active, survivors outside of a 24 meter radius of a hook survivor suffer from the following. Performing a rushed vault through a window will prompt the entity to block it for 15 seconds. Performing a rushed locker entry will prompt the entity to block it for 15 seconds or until the killer searches it. Stopping the cleansing or blessing of a totem will prompt the entity to block it for 15 seconds. Releasing an exit gate switch will prompt the entity to block both exit gate switches for 15 seconds. Scourge Hook Monstrous Shrine. While a survivor is on a Scourge Hook and the killer is 24 more meters away, they suffer from accelerated sacrifice progression of 9%, increased self-unhook difficulty of 15%, increased self-unhook penalty of 9%, increased unhook time of 15%. Nemesis. Any survivor who blinds you or stuns you becomes your obsession. Anytime your obsession switches to another survivor by any means, that survivor suffers from the oblivious status effect for 60 seconds, they suffer from the exhausted status effect for 10 seconds, and their aura is revealed to you for 10 seconds. Oppression. When damaging a generator, up to 3 other random generators also begin regressing. Generators affected by oppression will be highlighted in white for 3 seconds. Survivors repairing generators when oppression activates will scream, revealing their location, and oppression has a cooldown of 20 seconds per generator affected. Overcharge. While charged, damaging a generator will cause the following effects. All generators within your tear radius will begin to regress if they are not being repaired. Overwhelming presence. Chasing a survivor holding an item will cause that item to passively lose 1% of its charges per second. So it will take 100 seconds of chasing to fully deplete an item. Play with the food. You simply start the trial with 1 token and it has a cooldown of 5 seconds and not 10 seconds. Pop goes the weasel. Increase the effectiveness of the charged effect by an additional 10%. Predator replaces the scratch marks left behind by running survivors with bright red footprints. Save the best for last. Each time you hit a survivor other than the obsession with a basic attack, save the best for last grants 1 token up to a maximum of 8 tokens, gaining stackable 5% movement speed increase on successful attacks per token up to a maximum of 40%. Each time you hit your obsession with a basic attack, save the best for last loses 2 tokens. When the obsession is sacrificed or killed, you can either gain or lose any more tokens. You can only be obsessed with 1 survivor at a time. If this sounds weird, it basically means your movement speed whilst you're on attack cooldown is increased by a maximum of 40% if you have all 8 tokens. Shadowborn. Survivors will glow when within a 10 meter radius. Survivor glows cannot be seen through objects. It's not wall hacks, it just makes survivors bright. Spies of the shadows. Crows startled by survivors within 36 meters alert you with a unique loud noise notification. You can no longer disturb crows. Increase the amount of crows that spawn in a trial by 50%. Spies from the shadows has a cooldown of 5 seconds between alerts. Strider. It simply also increases the volume of breathing by 50%. Territorial Imperative activates whenever a survivor comes within 60 meters of a hooked survivor while you are 32 meters or more away. While Territorial Imperative is active, your movement speed is increased by 10%. Thrilling Tremors. While carrying a survivor, all generators not being repaired by survivors are blocked by the entity and cannot be repaired. Effect lasts for 10 seconds after carrying the survivor. Thrilling Tremors has a cooldown of 60 seconds. It makes it so that instead of activating upon pickup, it activates while carrying. Tinkerer. Whenever a generator is repaired to 70%, you benefit from the following effects. Triggers a loud noise notification for that generator revealing its location. Grants the undetectable status effect for 30 seconds. Tinkerer can only trigger once per generator per trial. Unnerving Presence. Survivors repairing or healing within your tear radius suffer from the following effects. Increase the trigger odds of skill checks by 10%, decreases the success zone of skill checks by 60%, and removes the great skill check zone. Unrelenting. In addition to what it does now, it also increases your movement speed during a missed basic attack cooldown by 25%. Whispers. You hear the sporadic whispers of the entity whenever at least 1 survivor is within your tear radius. The whispers become louder the closer a survivor is to your current location. Zanshin Tactics. The auras of breakable walls, pallets, or windows are revealed to you within 32 meters. Whenever a survivor vaults a window or pallet within range, its aura will be shown in red for 4 seconds. And that is absolutely everything for Base Kit Killer. I hope you enjoyed the video, and the next 20 or so uploads in this series will be each individual killer. It will probably be a nice big spam upload, I'm afraid. But I do hope you will watch them all, and yeah, other than that, I can only wish you a great day. Leave your thoughts in the comments below, and I'll hopefully see you again next time. Bye bye.